Michele Johnson, thank you so much for being with us and doing this for us. The first question I want to ask you, it's what I ask everybody to start out, is can you give us a little background into, well, yourself personally, and also how you got your start in the world of interpreting?
Sure. I'm originally from north central Pennsylvania, so up in the mountains,
Mhm.
Bradford County. And there was a deaf student in my drafting class. Drafting was my focus in high school. Thought that's what I wanted to do. So he was in my class. So that kind of always just resonated with me. I would talk to him through his interpreter. I had a little stint after high school. I went and pursued another option. And then I ended up out in Western Pennsylvania at Mount Aloysius College for their interpreter training program. So that was my path. And then after that, I went to Rochester. So I spent 6 years in Rochester just working in mainstream settings.
I'm glad you pronounced Mount Aloysius because I was going to butcher that. That was actually one of my next questions. Because I did see that. I tried to do a little bit of research. It seems like a very small program.
Oh, so tiny.
So I'm wondering
So
if you
tiny.
could tell us a little bit, because we've talked with some people who went to programs at some of what I consider the bigger, physically bigger programs for interpreting. If you could tell us a little bit about what it was like to go to such a small program, like the pros and cons of that.
Oh, well, it was super tiny. We had
Mhm.
a very small cohort. At the time, it was one of only two programs in Pennsylvania that had
Oh.
interpreting program. Obviously, Bloomsburg is the one
Mhm.
that everyone knew. Mount Aloysius is just quaint. Just they didn't really have dormitories at the time, so we were all off campus. A lot of non-traditional students, but that really matched me. I like that really small setting, and we still had nuns. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, which was interesting. I didn't really know that when I went, which you
Uh-huh.
would think I would really know. It was a Catholic college, but yeah. So but it matched me really well. It meant if people are interested in the smaller schools, it has expanded. They
Mhm.
had a bachelor program now. So yeah.
And then you said you ended up in Rochester after that. I'm curious how
Oh, I
you.
have to tell you one more little
Oh,
piece about Mount
please,
Aloysius.
please.
So I'm not sure if they still participate in this, but they had what was called a CAS program, CASS,
Okay.
and it was Central American students, scholarship students that they brought in from all sorts of countries. In our United States government would sponsor these students to come here,
Hmm.
and we had 4 or 5 students just in my interpreting class, but there
Wow.
were deaf students as well in all sorts of different professions on our campus. So we had constant access to interacting, volunteering for the student activities with these Central American students. And once they finished their program, they would have to go back to their own countries. But
Mhm.
I still am so connected with these people. Because I was actually married before I went to college, I got to I had a couple come up here to central Pennsylvania and
Uh-huh.
go snowmobiling over winter break and show them snow.
Right.
But yeah, we got to be a host family. So it was just, we got that immersive experience. And then to see them grow, develop their own deaf programs in their different countries, that I just had to add that because that CAS program is really cool.
That
It's
does
part of
sound.
Georgetown too.
Yeah, and it makes me think that for such a small, forgive me, a university or college, is it?
It's a college. Yeah.
College. For such a small college, that sounds like it must have really been leaning hard into accessibility between people from other countries and to have that number of deaf staff and or
We
students there.
we often had spoken language interpreters and sign language interpreters in our elective classes as well.
That's amazing, especially
Yeah.
for um like I said, a small school, but also this was forgive me for dating anything here, but I think that was late 90s, early 2000s,
That's
correct?
correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's amazing. That's really kind of ahead of its time in a lot of ways. um
So Rochester, what
so
was
yeah, how did we get to Rochester?
Well, my husband was an engineering major at Penn State Altoona.
Hmm.
We both went to schools. We were married, but we went to different schools within the area. And he finished his engineering associate and needed to go on. So we were looking at Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh or RIT. I was like,
Right.
come on,
Yeah, yeah.
let's go to Rochester. So we had never been. We took a weekend trip, and yeah, 6 years.
Wow. So you went from northern PA to Rochester to
Yes,
southern New York.
you got it.
And what was the drive, just to get closer to family, to get to, and then back in
A lot of it
Binghamton-ish
was,
area?
yeah, and again, I didn't really know Binghamton, but my husband got a great job opportunity with Kodak and Xerox at the time. Just they were just downsizing tremendously. So his competition, he was going up against people with, master's degrees, PhD degrees, taking technology level employment. So I happen to have a good friend down here in the Southern Tier who is in HR, and of course she wanted me here,
Right.
but she got him a job, and this is home. This
Ask
is
you
home.
is that you spent a good amount of time working for New York State. And you have this unique perspective as somebody who has not only been an interpreter, but worked on the end of requesting interpreters through other agencies and things like that on behalf of New York State. So I'm curious if that experience, both being on both sides of that, because very few people get to be both the person who has to go through the rigmarole of requesting interpreters, and then being the person who actually provides the service, has given you any sort of extra insight that you didn't have before, or appreciation for the other side, or anything like that that jumps out at you?
Oh, absolutely. Boy, did I learn what the coordinators have to do.
Mhm.
As in my role, I did staff interpretation as well as the coordination of the interpreters that for the contracted services, they all needed interpreters if they were working with deaf and hard of hearing individuals. So yeah, I learned I learned quickly which agencies had their
Mm.
business plan in order, because timeliness is so important. When you're dealing with people that need job interviews, you can't have a delay in your response. You can't be waiting on, oh, we'll see if we get an interpreter. And when you have agencies on with the state, you have contracts. So you have to only go through the specific agencies that you're allowed. And it just makes all the difference in the world when there's consistency and reliability. Responsiveness was huge, because it just allows you to keep moving on with your day, knowing
Mhm.
that you're going to have someone there, and you're going to have someone that's, yeah. And frankly, I mean, Empire was our go-to. It was
Mhm.
just
It's
so
very nice.
easy. It was so easy. And I got a good taste of what else is out there. So it definitely helps me now when I'm working with coordinators, because I know timeliness is really important, that the interpreters as well get back, because you have your client on the end that is waiting for this information so that they can get prep material and get everything back. So yeah.
Well, I want to make it clear, I wasn't fishing for a compliment, but we'll take it.
Uh,
So that's
well, I didn't know
okay.
if you wanted me to call you guys out, but yeah, luckily Empire was one of the, but it really opened my eyes to what some businesses will do, especially businesses that don't have roots
Mm.
in your work area. They're not, I don't think they're as invested. They might not have ever met the consumers that you're working with. So I still see that to this day. I see it all the time with these agencies that are outliers, and it's different.
Uh, One of the things I did in prep for this was to go back and look through. You've been working with Empire since it looks like 2012, on and off, different times, and we've had you in basically every setting imaginable. Platform, medical, everything. I'm curious if there's a particular setting that you find most comfortable, or that you enjoy the most working in.
Education, professional. I love to learn, and honestly, most environments are learning opportunities. So
Mhm.
that's what I find rewarding. Yeah, we get to do some really cool stuff. So, but I definitely like the college setting and the business setting. I love providing services, facilitating communication for deaf professionals, because it's just so important to represent them well and have them really be listened to, in a business environment. And it's just awesome to watch it all happen. And it's like you're not even there. It's just so fluid. And I love that.
Any particular settings that you try to avoid at this point?
Oh, I am not your platform person.
Okay.
I don't really do musical performance. I like other people's words. Like, it's an art, and we have such skilled interpreters that love that stuff, that do such a good job. Not saying I won't, because sometimes you're in a moment and all of a sudden they bring up a song, but I am very much more of like, I'm a little nerdy, so
Uh-huh.
I'm much more like the learning and the growth,
Sure, sure.
not the arts. It's just not my thing.
That's fair enough. Um, I was trying to dig up some personal background on you as I went through, and that proved to be quite difficult because although you have a couple of social media sites, it seems as if you do not spend a lot of time on them. And I appreciate that quite a bit. But the one thing I did see, even if it was every only 4 or 5 months of you updating a profile picture, was your family. And it got me thinking about, as everybody has over the last couple of years, dealing with family and work in a pandemic and coming hopefully now out of it onto the other side. So I'm curious if there's any big takeaways that you have learned trying to juggle family and work and survival over these last couple of years, now that we can kind of see it on the other side. If you have any thoughts or reflections on that.
As far as me personally, like I'm very blessed. My husband's job is extremely flexible. So, and he can work at home as needed, which he did spend a lot of time with. So that really opened me up. It really allows me to pretty much take any jobs that I have availability for.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been huge in my career. We've always, that's just how we are. We give and take. When we were in Rochester, I worked, he went to college, and now like it's just great. And so yeah, and like even my daughter, like she'll step in and take care of her brother. Like it's just we all have to take care of each other. This has been hard.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I've been very fortunate to have that flexibility and support within my unit. Yeah.
And if I may ask, what is the ages of your daughter and your son?
I have an 18-year-old daughter, Macy, who's
Mm-hmm.
at Binghamton University, and then I have a 10-year-old son, Flynn. So
Okay. So
yeah.
she just graduated and she graduated mid-COVID.
She definitely did. She didn't get any of the celebrations. We did get to go to graduation,
Okay.
but it was limited capacity. But still very fortunate. We had some micro celebrations.
Some micro. Yeah. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
great.
She never got to visit Binghamton before she went there. I mean, she'd been on for different things throughout high school, but these kids didn't even get to tour,
It's an interesting experience. Hopefully 3 years from now, it's a weird distant memory for them, but it's an interesting way to start a transition like that for sure.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of that kind of transition, I don't know how much virtual work you were doing pre-COVID, but certainly everybody had to transition largely, if not entirely, for a while. And I think moving forward, it's still going to be a good mix of it. What are your experiences or thoughts about that move? Any pros or cons? Do you hate it, love it? I'm curious how you feel about working virtually.
I enjoy the balance now. I mean, right from the get-go, it was a lot of we just spent a lot extra time. Like I was in a college setting at the time, and we had to go straight over to virtual and just continue as is. So my team and I would spend lots of times like does this wall color look good? Like
Right.
I'd put up different lighting. And so it's just still to this day, we're just constantly adjusting to give the best presentation. But I really enjoy the balance. Right now, it seems to be less and less virtual. I drive a lot. I drive incredible distances to rural areas. That's where my heart is. But I absolutely love the fact that I've got to meet these interpreters from all over New York State virtually. I've met a couple Rochester interpreters that I never knew when I was in Rochester, and I just love it. And one person's Marika Larson was my mentor. She got me both my certificates. So I've been able to work with her again, even though she was
That's great.
moved away from my area. So I just love it. And then these newer interpreters I'm getting to work with, I'm growing from them. So I like it. I love that we get to collaborate. There's actually quite a bit of collaboration prepping for these meetings together.
Mhm.
So I enjoy it, but I enjoy everything I do. But the VRI is special because I get to work with the top cream of the crop interpreters. Yeah.
It's a great transition. I'm so glad you said that. So my next question is going to be wrapped in a compliment, actually. So I'm going to return the compliment that you gave us earlier. We did a little bit of digging in prep for this, and if you combine notes or emails or phone calls from because we track all of this stuff in our system that we've received from either customers or consumers or team members. Nobody has come close to getting as many compliments as you have in the existence of Empire.
Oh,
So people love working with you or next to you and things like that. So first of all, just thanks for being awesome, because it was really fun just going back through all the notes and the compliments and people saying, Michelle's awesome, things like that. So that's the compliment part. The question, and you sort of alluded to that a little bit, is what goes into your mindset? Because so many of the compliments, people were saying, I love teaming with Michelle. So what is the prep or the mindset that you go in when you're teaming with somebody, let's say a brand new person? How is it that you're coordinating and making sure that they feel comfortable working together with you?
it's really important to know what their strengths are, what they're comfortable with, so that you can be supportive of that. Uh, if we're going into an assignment where I've worked with the person a lot and the other person is like, yeah, I haven't had that opportunity, it's good to know that if there might be a heavy voicing potential, that, I might have to be the one that does that section of the interpretation. So it's bouncing back ideas like that. And I have to say, like, even the younger teams, man, they're always teaching me stuff, how to prep, how to properly adjust the PowerPoints that we receive, and how I'm not sure who it was. I'm sorry, but they told me a great technique, and I'm like, this is just wonderful. But it's important also, sometimes teams want to have a secondary screen available. So sometimes we'll pop off during our off interpreting, obviously still watching to make sure there's quality assurance. But a lot of interpreters use a side screen so that we can continue to give feedback or to give finger spelling, because the other interpreter will often have their eyes on the PowerPoint, making sure that the proper nouns are, that we're interpreting those appropriately. So I guess it's knowing what people prefer, what they need.
You said something interesting in terms of the logistics of teaming there. It makes it sound like it might be easier to team virtually than it is to do it on site somewhere. Is there any truth to that, or am I sort of digging too deep into what you're saying?
No, because there's definitely limitations, because your
Okay.
eyes are everywhere. A lot of us are doing dual screens. I know one guy's got like a 55-inch monitor out there. So your eyes are all over the place, as opposed to, yeah, in person's definitely better, because you're just getting more. You're getting, more body language, more. You can just do subtle things to let people know that you got it, you don't have it, please step in, give me a feed. Because that's not so easy to do. You can't just jump into a middle of a presentation and be like, oh, hold up.
Right. Fair enough. Fair enough. You don't have to answer this one. I'm happy to cut this out, but it's been gnawing at me since the beginning of the interview. You had mentioned that you went to school for something else and then jumped in, and you sort of glossed over it quick
I
with a
did.
smile. Can you tell us what it was that you went to
So
originally for? You don't have
after
to.
After high school, I
Mhm.
spent some time in Virginia doing fashion runway modeling.
Oh,
So
okay.
I know, and it's, as I said, platform is not my thing, but I
That's
went to
pretty platform.
training. I went to training down there. I spent a good 6 months in training, learning how to do makeup and fashion. The only thing I think that applies now is I know to like put white under here to make your eyes look big, you know what I mean? Like contouring.
Uh,
But it wasn't my thing at all. I did one nice show where I got to work for Saks Fifth Avenue and wear fur coats, which would
cool.
never ever happen again.
Okay.
But did not like that attention, and it didn't use my mind.
Hmm.
So I had a little year off and I was like, this is not me. What else can I do?
And where was that show in New York?
That was in the DC area. Yeah,
Gotcha.
it was
Okay.
actually in Chevy Chase, Maryland, is where the show was put on. But yeah, not my cup of tea at all.
I'm so glad I asked that because I
Nobody
never would have been.
knows. Like
Yeah.
I very few people know that I did that, and
Well, everybody's gonna know now. So
uh, they're gonna pick on me. They're like, "Show me your model walks." I'm
that's
like,
right.
"Oh my
That's
god,
right.
you guys."
Well, I guess the only other question I have for you then is as you look forward to the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years, both you personally in the field and the field in general, do you have any thoughts, or if I asked you to make some, uh, guesses as to where things are headed, again, both for you personally and the field, what would you think that the future holds?
I'm seeing a lot more of businesses using like the universal design approach to just having interpreters available like they would any other accommodation. So I really believe that people are understanding the importance. We saw this with COVID. A lot of places were providing the interpreter and any LEP, services. I think they're understanding the value. I see it all the time going to places. They just thank us for being there. It just
Mhm.
makes it so easy and smooth. So I really believe we're going to see more and more just interpreters just there, visible. And then on a personal level, I have to
Mhm.
say, I'm currently mentoring 4 students from Bloomsburg University
Wow.
and different levels, but I just love it. And I'm taking a lot of training myself to become a better mentor, to know what I need to do, how to provide, appropriate feedback. And so that's where I'm going in the next 5 years. I want to continue to help people and bring them along the model that I was raised. So when I met Stacy Short when I was living in Rochester. I went to an ESSP conference.
Hmm.
I believe it was in Corning, and Stacy Short was there tabling for Empire. And I gave her my resume saying, "Hey, I might move to the Southern Tier someday." And that connected me with Empire. And then when I finally did make the move, I believe I've actually been with you guys since 2008.
Has it
But
really that long?
yeah, yeah.
You know what? I bet you're right, because when I looked at your working with us, I only looked at our tracking software, which has only been around since
Oh,
2012. So I didn't go through all the papers from
yep.
way before we got automated. Okay, so 2008.
So Empire was the first freelancing agency that I've ever connected with. So I
Mm.
feel born and raised into community interpreting with Empire. And that's
Well, Michelle Johnson, thank you so much for your time. This was really fun. This was really fun. I appreciate it.
thank you. I hope